Do I think it addresses all of these challenges? No, but I don't think anybody thinks this was going to be the permanent fix. There's a commission that I sit on that will continue to look at those sort of items. The AB 469 or NRS 388G still has the rural proportionality requirements in it. And I worked very hard when I first got here with a community of rural, a community group from the rural group, as well as with Superintendent Canavero and Deputy Superintendent Roger Roming at the time to define the rural schools. We pretty much had that kind of definition, so we just more kind of codified that component to it and the proportionality of it, which was really the 2017 was the base. And it was defined as you take the per pupil funding for each of those rural schools as a percentage above the average for the district in totality. And as Mr. Paul mentioned earlier, the amount for Moapa at the time was 136.91% above the average. And so when we calculate the funding for every one of those public or rural schools, we have to consider that proportionality, and we do. And we make sure that they meet at least that. We fund them just like they would under the model. And then if they're below that amount, we provide additional funding to ensure they're at least at that proportional amount. And the vast majority of the groups have actually gone higher than that proportion over time because they do get some additional funding for different reasons within the model itself. But there are reasons that we still need to consider those things differently because they do operate differently, and similar to the way small districts in the state are treated differently, we need to continue to look at that.
And sorry, just member Hughes for record, just one, I should have clarified. I understand that the new pupil-centered funding formula should address some of those things, and there's some other bills. I was thinking specifically about the implementation of AB 469 as we think about services agreements, sort of autonomy at the local school level. Are there specific, could we or should we be thinking about schools in rural communities, the set of things you have autonomy over, what those services agreements, what has to be vetted, what not? Should there be a difference there, or could there be in the negotiations? Is that sort of part of the conversation?
So just to get it for the record, I'll answer possibly. I think they should need to be considered individually, and if an SLA makes sense that, or some outside service could be different, I think we need to consider that, right? So I don't think it's a universal yes or universal no. I think it's on an individual basis based off the need of the school and the district and how it complies with all the laws.
President Ortiz, for the record, Dr. Dalley, I see you back there. Would you like to address that most recent comment? Please come up.
This is Lindsey Dalley for the record. I was on I'm still on the middle school SOT team when we strenuously tried to get SLAs specifically for utilities. We have our own utility companies out in Moapa Valley, water, power, sewer. It's very easy to break that out. We could not get them to move on that. The thing that has got me shaking is the rural proportionality. I think, let me take a breath here. When I was hearing there, maybe 20% was true. We worked very hard on trying to come up with that proportionality, and we got stonewalled at every turn. I think you need to get Mr. Paul up here. We rewrote a couple of SLAs. They never even looked at them. They just pushed them away, rejected them. And the proportionality statement, they met personally with Mr. Goudie. I did not attend that meeting, so I cannot speak to it. But I know it was just blown off and saying, if you get one more dollar, then that's a proportion. I don't know any math teacher that says an additional dollar is a proportion. So there is an illusion happening here that is just flipping me out. So anyway, if you want details and facts, talk to Principal Paul, because he can get that, because he was there at that meeting.
So we will absolutely continue to investigate that specific issue and make sure that our rules are treated not only fairly, but that they are, per the law, held harmless and continue to receive proportional funding. So expect additional feedback from the Department of Ed on that one. I will take any last questions before I bring Dr. Jara up for final comments. Go ahead, Member Dockweiler.
I believe Mr. Paul's in the audience. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're welcome to come up and address that. That is the whole point of a public forum. I apologize. Names are not my strong suit. I'm a numbers girl. Tell me your birthday and I'll remember it.
Ken Paul, principal at Lyon Middle School. I still get a little nervous with all of this, but we did work really hard because we are a big believer. As far as the proportionality goes, I know even, and he's right in saying we kind of went back and forth. And for those that know Larry Moses, and the bottom line for me is it never felt like we really agreed. Because, on the chart where he says that we're 136.9% above, he does put down in a note how he figures it from there. And basically he's saying as long as you receive more money than in 16 and 17, you're proportional. To me, I've always had the belief that if we're 36.9% above the per pupil average of the district, and let's say this year, whatever it is right now, then we would get 36.9% more for each student. To me, it seems like it's that simple. Now, I'm not a big financial guy, but that's what gave us the red flag, is that immediately we were claiming, hey, we lost the funding for 2 teachers, and that has a lot of history to it. Why they wanted us to be at 6 and what paper they took that on. I mean, there's a lot of history there. To the other ones with the SLA accounts, we were quite, saying, hey, we're rural, so we're going to be different. And I know the law says that they're supposed to be responsible for the costs. They're supposed to get a fair cost. And that money, that 85% is supposed to be, actually have the funds at the school and have some kind of control of them. And then we can either, in my mind, push a button and buy back that service, or we can decide to use that money elsewhere. And it's just, for me, the truth is though we have no control, just like this board came up with. We don't have control or discretion in reality. So we wanted to negotiate the agreements. And again, nothing... Jason Goudie, he was here from the beginning. I was here from the beginning. I've been very passionate about it. I think he tends to see things more from a centralized perspective, and that. But I just get kind of discouraged because, there's a team where they have legal counsel and they have this and that. But when we are disagreeing with maybe an interpretation, what do we have as a principal? And, are those lawyers for us as well? So that's kind of where some of my frustration comes from, is do we actually have control and discretion of that? I know it takes time, but I've been told, especially from Jason, yes, that's true. We need to address it in the future, but we're 5 years down the road. And so that's a frustration.
That's exactly what I just said under my breath.
Yeah.
Can you hit your button there? Awesome. Okay, so Mr. Goudie, as I just gave others a deadline, I would love to see service level agreements addressed before the end of the year. So negotiations with teams, service level agreements, especially when it comes to, Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez, I'm trying to be professional with your title, will continue to investigate the specific thing around funding and proportionality. So we will keep that as a hot item on our list. In the meantime, number 1, bring up the SLAs to the Board of Trustees again. And number 2, ensure that schools, specifically principals, are given a list of SLAs. And if they choose not to use that district service, they have the ability to negotiate with another vendor per the law. Yes, Mr. Paul.
And part of it, again, comes with those, I brought that up at the very beginning, the policies and regs and the things that don't. Because even in that very first slideshow that the previous superintendent showed, it was like you can hire your staff And then it has an asterisk, but it has to agree with bargaining agreements. And the other one, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. But there are some red flags in that presentation itself where it's like, yes, this is how we're going to do things now, but it all has to fit into the old structure, into those.
Yes, Deputy Superintendent Gonzalez.
Thank you, Felicia Gonzalez, for the record. I just wanted to point out that there is a specific timeline related to SLAs that is outlined in NRS 38G.
Okay, we were going to hold you to that timeline.